How many times have you done this? Decided, oh yeah, I want to get some extra reps in at volleyball, so I really want to improve, so I'm going to do loads of practice at home. And then you go on YouTube, look up some videos, or you ask your coach, and you really motivated, you stick at it for a couple of days and then give up. Well, I have an idea as to why, and I'll explain as much in this video, as well as giving you 3 drills that you can do on your own in your living room. And these drills hopefully don't fall prey to some of the problems that I'll be talking about, so hopefully you'll be way more likely to keep doing them in the long term and keep seeing big improvements. If you're new to the channel, by the way, my name's George. I play volleyball for England and Uppsala in Sweden. And on this channel, I cover my life playing volleyball, my journey to play professionally, as well as all other things volleyball, lots of coaching stuff like this one. So if that sounds interesting, please feel free to subscribe. Okay, so let's look at trying to practice volleyball at home. The most important thing to think about, in my opinion, when thinking about trying to improve anything, whether it's playing volleyball at home, learning a language, trying to read more, whatever, is the best program is the one that you actually do. It might not necessarily be optimal. There could be more efficient or more technically effective programs out there. But if you find them boring, or if you don't understand why they help, or if you don't see progression, or if you just don't really get it or engage with it properly, you're going to quit. You're not going to keep going. So the best program is always the one that you actually do. The first big problem that most at-home volleyball practice things have, in my opinion, is they're boring. So you often see something like just do 3 sets of 20 volleys up in the air to yourself. Now, if you're a complete beginner, this could be great because you might really struggle to literally just volley the ball. But once you've been playing for a little bit and you can comfortably do that, it very quickly becomes very boring. Sometimes, obviously, it can be fun to just volleyball. I do often just volleyball or chuck a tennis ball around, or I don't know, just throw my phone around. Like, it's fun to just chuck stuff sometimes. But it's very different from occasionally choosing to do it on a whim to, right, I'm going to get better. I'm going to do my 3 sets of 20 volleys every day. Like, realistically, know myself, I'm just not going to do it. I will find it boring too quickly if that's all the instruction that I'm given. Maybe there's an ideal athlete out there who would just go, no, I am going to do this because I've said I will. Boom. And they're a bit of a robot and they can just do it. But okay, so maybe we keep that in mind. We want to strive towards being that guy who's just crazy motivated and disciplined. But at least speaking for myself, like, I'm not that guy and I don't think I ever will be. I think it's more realistic to accept that fact and then try to change the way I'm training so that it's much more doable and I'm actually likely to turn up and do it every day because it's fun and I look forward to it. So that's the big question then. How do you make it fun? How do you make these drills so that you look forward to them? That's what I'm going to look at next. I personally think of there being 2 ways of doing this. The first one we're going to look at is progression. So for me, one of, if not the most fulfilling things in sport, and one of the reasons it's so addictive, is improving. Getting better at stuff just feels amazing. So you want to be doing drills where you can actually see yourself getting better at them the more you do it. So it needs to be challenging enough to begin with that you can't just instantly do it mindlessly, and then have progressions built into the drill so you can make it harder and harder as you get better and better, so you continue to see yourself actually improving as you put the effort in. And then the drill needs to have some progressions so that as you get better, you can make it harder to increase the challenge and keep it engaging. So let's look at an example. We'll come back to the simple thing I mentioned earlier, just volleying the ball up in the air to yourself, okay? So you could think, instead of just doing that X times, try and do it as many times as you can in a row without an error. So then you have a high score to try and beat. So you have a reason to come back to it, see if you can get more than you did last time. Obviously, just volleying a ball up in the air, if you're a decent player, that's going to be a bit too easy. So then you need to add some other criteria to make it more challenging. This could, for example, be you have to alternate a normal volley, you just do it mindlessly, and then completely clean. Like, the volley has to be cash, 0 spin. That's harder than you think to do that over and over again. But I think making this subtle change when we go from just do X reps to then having a score to try and beat, it makes this so much more exciting because you think you've got your high score and then you're going and like, I'm having a pretty good run here. Oh shit, I'm getting within a couple of my high score. Oh God, and then you start to get these butterflies and it gets exciting, and then maybe you screw it up. Maybe you don't, you smash your high score and you beat it by a few. That like feeling of exhilaration, the adrenaline you'll get before, during and afterwards, that's what's going to keep you coming back to train, as opposed to just aimlessly volleying a ball without instruction or without a goal or without anything wider to keep you doing it. So I mentioned aimlessness just now, and that brings me nicely onto the next thing I want to talk about for how to keep drills engaging and making you want to do them, which is having an aim, having an understanding of how doing this drill will make you a better player. What's your intention for doing this, apart from it being fun? So I think there's 2 parts to this intention idea. One is to have something in mind of what you're actually trying to work on now. So is it something maybe quite technical, like I'm trying to really relax my wrists when I volley to get quicker wrists? Or is it a more general thing like, I'm doing some one-on digs to just improve my ball control? And the second thing is to understand how this thing you're practicing in the moment, like the improving your ball control with one-on digs, fits into actually playing volleyball. Like, how do you tell the difference between the guy who's done loads of one-on digs in his bedroom practicing and the guy that hasn't? How does this drill actually transfer to the volleyball court to make you a better player? Looking at ball control in a bit more detail then, I think will help illustrate this. So people often talk about, doing so-and-so drill will improve your ball control. And they kind of just say it in a bit of a hand-wavy, vague way of, yeah, more ball control is good. And Fine, yeah, obviously that's the case, but what do they actually mean? Like, what actually is ball control? I think it's kind of hard to define in a sentence, or at least I'd struggle to do it, but maybe looking at some specific examples of when you play will help give an understanding of, again, how doing some drill that improves your ball control actually makes you better at volleyball. So if we look at tipping, for example, there obviously isn't a huge amount of technique to tipping a volleyball as opposed to, say, like a jump topspin serve. But if you've done lots of practice, maybe at home with a ball, playing the ball with one hand in the air, getting really comfortable and confident with the feel of the ball in your hand, you're going to be more consistent at tipping the ball just over the block or just on the line, putting it exactly where you want it to go, than if you hadn't put that practice in. Some other things where I think this ball control idea is really clear is passing a really, really easy free ball where you're just volleying the ball or digging it like from the 3-meter line to the setter, or playing a roll shot just over the top of the block, or maybe just setting generally if it's a perfect reception. You don't have to worry about your footwork so much, and it's literally just bop, volley the ball in a straight line consistently and accurately. I think skills like these that are quite narrow and specific and don't have as many moving parts as, again, like a jump topspin serve, are illustrative of how drills you could be doing in your living room would actually tangibly make you better at volleyball. Although specifics aside, I do also think it is the case that as a general point, the more touches you get on the volleyball, one hand, two hand, one arm, two arm, whatever, the better of a player it's going to make you. I think thinking of ball control, I find specifically with these examples does help, but it is also true that it is kind of like a vaguer, more abstract concept that the more touches you get in different scenarios, the better your general ball control will be, and generally that will probably make you a better player. I think to try to define it, even though I said I couldn't earlier, maybe something like you'll be more consistent and accurate when interacting with the ball than otherwise. Like if you have better ball control, you'll be more consistent and accurate, I think, something like that. So to summarize the second point, what I'm basically saying is having an understanding of what the thing you're trying to work on is, and then how this thing fits into volleyball big picture, helps to keep you motivated to do the drills because you see how it's going to take you to a high level, and that helps keep the drills more enjoyable so that you actually keep doing them. I just want to clarify, I do think there is a place for 3 sets of 20 or whatever, and you don't have to always make the number of reps a challenge or a game, but I think that only really works if you think of the gym, for example, where 3 sets of 8, whatever on the bench press is motivating and fun because it's challenging in its own right. You don't know if you're going to get to 8 reps or not, or you do, but it's going to be really, really hard. Whereas when it's just volleying a ball up in the air, for most people, that's just too easy. So it's not fun and challenging. Hence, you need to sort of not gamify it, but make it a challenge. Make the number of reps, the scoring, that is the challenge, instead of just doing them being the challenge, if that makes sense. Okay, so enough theory. What are these drills then? So I said, I have 3 for you. The first one is volleying. So the main focus of this drill is to work on distance control. So this drill will help with your ball control more generally in the way I talked about earlier, but the main thing this helps with, I think, is distance control. For whatever reason, I often find myself lying on the sofa, chucking a tennis ball or whatever I have in my hand at the ceiling, trying to see if I can get it so it just brushes the ceiling. This keeps me way more entertained than it has any right to. And then I thought, why not do it with the volleyball? So the basic outline is exactly that. Lie on your back and try to volley the ball so it just brushes the ceiling. And this is a lot harder than it sounds. Obviously, you could do this sat up, but I think doing it lying down makes it a lot harder, and as I said earlier, therefore a lot more fun. So relating this to what we talked about earlier, we have 2 questions to answer. 1, how do we make it fun? So progressions and scoring and so on. And 2, how does this make me a better player? The first thing I'd say here is that these are just my suggestions. By all means, please try them, but I'd really suggest you try to come up with your own scoring system and challenges and so on, because if you really get fun and creative with it yourself, you're going to find it more enjoyable, trust me. You may all find that just volleying the ball in your back is harder than it looks, and that it's enough of a struggle to keep you going. In which case, I suggest you just try to see how many you can do in a row until you can comfortably keep going without issue. Then you can try aiming for the ceiling and just do one at a time, and then get the ball back under control after each go. See how many brushes you can get before you lose control of the ball. And this does get quite tricky because whenever you overcook it and the ball actually properly hits the ceiling, it obviously speeds up a lot and comes down way faster than if it was just falling. And it's quite tough to stay composed when the ball's coming straight at your face with pace. Then once you've got that down, you can move on to try and do it continuously. So every volley, you're trying to aim for the ceiling. Again, see how many you can do in a row before you lose control of the ball. The other question then is, why is this useful? I think this drill is fairly self-explanatory. You're primarily working on distance control, which will help with accuracy and consistency of volleying, whether it's setting or passing free balls. Also, as I mentioned earlier, and this is true of all 3 of these drills, there's the more general ball control idea you're improving, which I talked about earlier. The idea that just getting touches in any capacity will help you with those 2 keywords, accuracy and consistency. Next is looking at how to play the ball with just one hand. So firstly, why is this helpful? Well, I think pretty uncontroversially, if you practice volleying or playing the ball with one hand in your living room, you're going to be better at playing the ball with one hand when you play volleyball. So what are the situations when that happens when we play? I think there's 3 main ones. The first one is just when you tip the ball over the net. So we're talking power tips, short tips, deep tips, block out, tipping when you're the setter. It's especially important, I think, in the modern game as like wing spikers to be confident and comfortable playing the ball with one hand. We're seeing this happen way more often than people are going, especially block out on these short tips where you almost hold the ball a little bit. The second time we play the ball with one hand in volleyball is when setting. Sometimes you just have to set the ball with one hand if it's a super tight set. Finally, the last situation where it's helpful to be good playing the ball with one hand is a bit of a more specific one. It's when you're blocking, if the ball is played, you go to block and the other guy tips it and it's landing just over you, you want to turn and try and play the ball up. Often the only way you can do it reaching backwards, because you can't really volley it, is to just play it up with one hand. There was a guy in our team, our Japanese opposite, Koichi, who was really, I mean, from my perspective, playing against him in training, annoyingly good at this, to the point where I knew if I was facing someone else in the block, I could go, do this short tip just over the block, and I'd be pretty confident it was a point if I did it at the right time. Versus when I was lined up against Koichi, I couldn't do it. I knew for a fact, if I tipped short, so it's going to land this far behind him, he's going to play it up, and he'd always do it with one hand, because as I say, you can't really volley the ball back like this, but you can sort of go, and just play it up with one hand. And so obviously when to do that and the skill of knowing to do it when the ball's gone over your head and not doing it when it's too far, okay, you need to practice that on court with an actual block and an attacker or whatever. But when it comes to actually playing the ball up in the air, obviously you want to do it as high and towards the center of court with control as you can. So again, if you're confident that you can play the ball here, bang, like this, up high, as opposed to you think you do it and it's just going to go like, then obviously that's a good thing. So it's another reason why this sort of practice will make you better at volleyball. As for how to practice this and how to make it fun, to begin with, I'd suggest just try playing it with one hand and then keep volleying it until you've got it back under control, and then go again, maybe with the other hand. See if you can get down to alternating volley, one hand, volley, the other hand, and so on. Once you're at the level where you can start to keep playing the ball without having to volley in between, like before, you can go back to seeing how many you can do in a row before you make an error. And once the limiting factor is more your arms getting tired than losing control of the ball, you can sort of treat this a bit like you would volleying and do the drills you might do for practicing volleying. And I'll cover more of these in a future video, but you could do the one we just did. Try playing the ball into the ceiling to practice your distance control, or the one I mentioned earlier in the video, trying to play the ball super cleanly so it's not spinning at all. The last drill is going to be something to work on your digging. The base of the drill is really simple. It's just going to be playing the ball with just one hand. And again, we'll look at firstly why this is useful and then how to make it fun. Now, I don't think there's really so many circumstances where you'll be forced to play the ball with one hand underarm in the same way there was with the drill we just looked at, but there's still a few. So basically it's just in defense. If you're playing scrappy scoop defense, for example, hard driven hit, and you're just going here, moving your platform, not forming a platform, just moving your body, then the ball might be popping off one hand. Or similarly, if you're diving to play the ball, sometimes you go to play the ball with one hand. So this drill is more thinking about, again, this general concept of just trying to get lots of positive touches to improve your general ball control. Okay, so looking at the drill, the first thing I'd say is think about that you don't always play the ball with the same bit of your forearm. When you're making your platform, you're playing the ball somewhere here versus say you're playing really Scooby defense, you're playing the ball much more in the middle of your forearm. And if you're just randomly sticking an arm out to get a ball, you're diving or something, you might be playing the ball on the back, on the top, somewhere else. So it's good to just get lots of touches on the different parts of your arm, not always in the same place. Anyway, so to begin with, I'd say just try to see how many touches you can get in total using either arm, like if you're doing keepy ups. The more the better, just keep the ball in the air. Then you can be a bit stricter and have the same idea, but alternate left arm, right arm. Then you can try the same again, but maybe go high, low, again, using whatever arm you want, and then moving on to alternating. And then finally, the hardest one is playing the ball high every time, again, eventually moving to strictly alternating. Once you can consistently do that, you're better than me. So it's your turn to give me some ideas. That's it for these drills. However, fear not if you want some more. I've got plenty more solo living room drills up my sleeve, as well as lots of drills you can do at home with a wall, in the garden, or in all of the above places if you happen to have a friend who can play with you. So please let me know in the comments how you got on with these. I'm very interested to hear some feedback, just in general, but also, were they fun? Did you actually do them? Did you stick at them if you started doing them? Are there any other drills you like doing at home? Let me know in the comments.